Carry on. Okay. Right. Hello, hello. Amazing, amazing women. Thank you so much for joining me again on Everyday Talks with me, Paula Roscoe. And today we are going to be talking about the Supreme Court. It's a year since Supreme Court made that decision. In April 2025, the UK Supreme Court ruled that under the Equality Act 2010, the terms sex, woman, and man mean biological sex. That means your sex at birth. And this applies even if someone has a gender recognition certificate, a JRC. The court said that it doesn't change how sex is interpreted in this law. So it doesn't matter what you want to pretend to be. It doesn't matter how you want to dress up. What you were at birth is exactly what you are in adult. And we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to talk about how it's affecting women a year on and how it's sort of why is it sort of become an optional law all of a sudden by this, by these governments and by these councils and by the NHS and by everyone else. It's like the Supreme Court tells you what law is, and that becomes law. But somehow, if it affects women, it becomes optional. Or we'll just wait. We'll just drag our feet. We'll just. Well, no. Let's talk about how that affects us. So today I am going to be joined with a beautiful, beautiful goddess, Beth. Beth, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today?
Hello, yes, I'm Beth. I was an auditor with local council, so I know about local councils. Unfortunately, I got MS, so I took early retirement. I say unfortunately, who doesn't want not to work? So I became interested in the women's movement. I started going on Twitter. I started seeing these very strange men saying they were women, and I was thinking, but they're not. And then I saw people agreeing with them, and I'm thinking, but you can see that's not a woman. What do you mean that's a woman?
Hmm.
And I have no problem if people want to dress up and call themselves Marigold, do that. But don't make me take part in your whatever and don't take my spaces. So that's how I got involved in the women's movement. And I got involved with WRN, which is Women's Rights Network in Wales. I live in sunny North Wales, and I became the coordinator for North Wales WRN, and I also do the vetting for the lead. I'm the lead on the vetting for WRN Wales as well. And it was just finding women who you could suddenly talk to, because we started self-censoring. I saw it in so many people. We were frightened to say, but that's not a woman, and I don't want him in my space. And we were being browbeaten. We were being be kind, as in people were telling us we should be kind. We've got to be kind to these poor. They're the most marginalised people in the world. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, they're not, because they're men. so,
Absolutely.
so they really aren't. And that's how I became involved in the movement. And it was just wonderful to meet so many women of the same opinion who all had been, I mean, for example, when we do Zoom chats with prospective people coming to join, and it's a cathartic moment for them to be able to talk to someone who isn't going to call them a transphobe, who isn't going to call them a bigot, just because they want to have safe spaces.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's me,
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
No,
And I,
I'm there. I'm there with you.
yeah,
It's so refreshing, isn't it?
yeah,
Because there's something powerful about a sisterhood. There's something
yeah,
when women come together, there is a connection. There is this almost instinctive, we are women, we have been through more or less everything that men have done to us,
yeah,
on an emotional, physical, whatever level. And we can all kind of take that on board. We can all understand it, and we all sort of instinctively start looking after each other. We look
Mm.
out for women. And then you put a man in that space, even if he wants to be wearing a dress, and it's a complete instant change.
Totally changes the whole thing.
You see it, don't you? You see women go,
Totally.
oh, right. So I'm not allowed to. And they
Yeah.
instinctively, and they probably don't even realize they're doing it half the time. They instinctively know not to share as much,
Yeah.
to be as open as much. Now, I've had this talk with women before about, and they all say, "Oh no, 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 I'm very open. I will say whatever I want in front of men." No, you won't.
No,
You
they
really
won't.
won't.
And
You will put it to a certain level and say, "Yeah, look, I'm all open and honest
yeah.
and great, and aren't I being kind?" But there is also something else that underlines women that men will never get. They will never understand it.
No, they can't understand it. But also, you do see, and I will never understand this myself, there are women who will pander to that part. I don't know if you saw a recent survey by YouTube which showed if only women voted, the Green Party, who have the most atrocious policies on women, would win almost all the seats in the parliament. And you just, what is the matter with you? Can't you see that they really have contempt for you? Real contempt. And that's what a lot of all I can see is contempt for women. I cannot see, oh, they're poor, they're poor, misunderstood, or they have a problem, or we've got to be kind. All I can see in them is the contempt they have for women.
Yeah.
And in some of them, it's a real hatred for women as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it
So,
really is. It's a complete disrespect
yeah,
for who we are, that they really want us to adhere to their agenda.
yeah,
And we're going to diminish ourselves to make a man feel
mm,
better. Well, no, I don't do that.
no,
And I certainly don't expect my daughter to come into a world and do that either,
no, no,
you know?
definitely not.
So what it means for single sexes, because the Equality Act allows single sex services like women's refuges and hospital wards, changing rooms, which we know that doesn't happen, Um, organisations can legally restrict some spaces to biological females
Yeah,
if they meet the Act's conditions. This means that men pretending to be women, known as trans, can be excluded from certain women-only spaces, even if they have a GRC. But the decision was framed as clarifying how the law already works. It's not creating a brand new
no,
law. Now, the problem that we're having is that there wasn't enough to protect women and girls and continue to allow protection for men and women who prefer to pretend to be the opposite
mm,
sex. And it's this issue that is allowing men to enter women's safe spaces and continue to attack and degrade women and girls who should have every right to live free from harm, harassment, have a piss in peace, for Christ's sake.
yeah,
And yet that is not the case because there wasn't enough said. It was still protecting their rights to be who they want to be.
mm,
So really, the moment I see the word inclusive,
yeah. It
I
makes me shudder.
immediately
Yeah,
know. So inclusive means exclusion of women and
it
girls.
does. I don't know if you remember it. I don't know if you had clubbing days when yeah, we've all had them, the clubbing days. There was always some creepy bloke in the club
No.
who gave you the total heebie-jeebies, and women know if someone's giving you the heebie-jeebies, it's a very damn good reason.
Yeah.
What did we all do? We'd go to the women's toilets to get away from him.
Yeah.
But we can't do that now. They've taken away that layer of safety that we used to have.
Mm.
And it makes me so angry that this has happened. And it's gone through, it happened so quickly.
Mm.
It just happened. Almost, it felt like overnight. One
Yeah.
minute, nobody believed that human beings could change sex. Nobody believed that a man in a dress was actually a woman. They believed he was, a man in the dress, and that's so,
Transvestite, we called
yeah,
them when I was a child.
transvestites.
Yeah.
And it was okay, big deal, didn't matter. But suddenly they were given an almost sacred status. And the way they treated women who think they're men again was totally different, because again, it's all about the men.
Mm,
Women are a subset in their own in trans anyway. They're treated very badly,
mm,
and it's a different reason why they think they're trans. Um, but yeah, so it happened so quickly, and that's one of the things that's very worrying. That so the government, from central government through to local government, shops, companies, everything was spread throughout without anyone listening to us to say, stop, you shouldn't be doing this.
mm,
And it really took a huge amount of work by grassroots organizations like women's rights, like Sex Matters, like Let Women Speak,
yeah.
to get anybody to listen to us. And of course, For Women Scotland were an amazing bunch of women.
Mm,
What they achieved is astounding. And contrary to popular belief, there is no huge millions of, I don't know, what is it they call us, the ultra Christian money coming from America. That's how we maintain. We do it through crowdfunding and using our own money in some cases.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it happened so quickly, and suddenly we're living in a world where, as Kemi Badenoch said, they're using Stonewall law,
Mm,
and it's not the UK law. It was a misinterpretation, which went across the board in every way you can think of, and in the whole of government, from education through to the NHS.
yeah. Yeah.
So it became, it can be irritating, it can be annoying. You can say, oh well, it's not that important in some areas, but in other areas, it is so important, because you have taken away women's safety, you've taken away their dignity, you've taken away their privacy,
Hmm.
and you mentioned like being able to pee in by in peace and quiet. And a lot of these men who are doing this say, well, no one ever complains. It's because we're all too frightened to. You're not going. If
Yeah.
someone's a hulking 6'4" bloke in a dress, you're not going to tell him to leave. I'm
Yeah.
5'2" if I'm lucky.
Mm,
It's a very frightening, and it changes as you said before, it changes the whole atmosphere of a place.
mm,
Um, and the fact that the government has taken this long, they still haven't done anything. I think Bridget Phillipson is a disgrace.
oh, yeah.
And it's all political. It's all about appeasing the activists. Um,
But why do you think that is? I mean,
I
you know,
think genuinely, I think what's happening is that there's a cabal of very how can we put it, pro trans. They're very trans active rights activists. You've got like Chris Bryant, you've got Angela Eagle, um, who took a huge amount of money from the drug companies who provide a lot of these drugs.
mm,
You've got, I can't remember who the other names are, Bridget Phillipson, and they are gearing up to change the law so that the Equality Act reads that women means men as well, the same they have done in Australia. And I think the reason she is not putting the EHCR um, guidance, it's not really guidance, it's a code of practice through, is because they want to say we're changing the law so this no longer matters. And that way it will actually nullify the Supreme Court ruling. And
yeah,
we're in for an even bigger fight then.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that's why they're doing it. And I think it's because I don't know. I don't know if it's they genuinely believe it, because I cannot believe any intelligent person can genuinely believe this. It's like genuinely believing that gravity doesn't exist. It's just, it's
It is.
totally,
It,
yeah,
it's it's just. I mean, I've sat and debated this with men and women
yeah,
about how can you suddenly go through life knowing biology. We all have biology
mm,
in school. I would say the majority of people do, and they understand it. They understand a women's bits and they understand a man's genitalia, and suddenly you've got 30, 40, 50, 60 plus year old people suddenly saying that a woman can have a penis.
yeah.
Where did that come from? How did that even?
I think there was a lot of guilt about the way homosexuals were treated. They were treated incredibly badly for a long time.
Of
I
course they
went
are.
on Pride. I've got a husband. He's a very nice husband, but we used to go on Pride marches back in the day when it was they had a genuine beef. They weren't having the same. They were denied rights, huge number of rights,
They were.
and they had natural right. This is what we want. This is how we can achieve it. And this is what we're going to campaign for. And when you asked any of them, well, what rights are you talking about? What rights haven't you got? They could articulate those
Sure, yeah.
very, very well.
Yeah.
And because it took a long time, far too long, for the gay and lesbian community to be treated as human beings, shall we say,
Mm.
I think there was a lot of guilt left over. And I think Stonewall, which had been a very respectable and, you know, righteous organization, had been given too much power. And suddenly they got to 2015 and they won. They won the last battle with same-sex marriage. They had everything else. They had equality under the law in the workplace, in going to the shops. They had equality under law, being able to raise their own children or adopt children. And then 2015, they won the final battle of same-sex marriages. So they won that. And you're looking around and thinking, well, what do we do now? And they've got employees that they have to pay, and they've got people on pensions who they now have to pay as well.
Mm.
And I think in some ways it was a very cynical move about how can we keep the money rolling in. And they could have gone one or two ways. The way I would have gone, and where they should have gone, is they should have said, right, we've got it, now we need to make sure that everybody else has it. And they could have looked at the Commonwealth, where there's huge amounts of homophobia, and said, no, we've got to work on, you know, making sure our government is only dealing with countries or promoting in countries where we can say this has to be allowed and you've got to stop doing this and maybe not throw gay men off roofs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They went and grabbed the tea. And I think it's because there's so much money in it. There's
Yeah,
so
oh,
much
yeah.
money in it.
There is billions. It's a billion-dollar
Billions in it.
business.
It's
Billion-dollar business.
huge business, especially in countries like America where the health service is all based on how much money you have.
Yeah, yeah.
It's slightly different here because obviously we have a completely different health system. But in America, people are making money hand over fist by doing these awful things to children and adults that they do.
Mm.
So I think that's why it was done, because we needed money. They needed money rather.
You know,
And
funny enough,
because
we were fairly recently, a few months ago, my husband and I, we rewatched. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Pride.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's a beautiful film. It's a really good, feel good, and it's a
yeah.
good reminder of how they did help the miners and that collaboration. It was
Mm.
beautiful. And we were watching it. Can you imagine what it would be like now?
Oh, no.
If you watch that, I mean, you'd hate it. You'd turn it off.
Yeah,
They walk through the streets naked.
yeah,
I've seen pictures of men with erections right in front of children. I've seen horrendous things. Dogs, men in masks pretending to
yeah,
be dogs, and the whole
yeah.
shebang. And apparently, that is now the Pride Festival.
But
It's
this is
like
it. We
that's not Pride.
That's not Pride.
That's
And also, a
S&M.
lot of them aren't gay. Most of them aren't gay. It's as they call it, spicy straight.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
Because a lot, there's a lot of you see these men who call themselves lesbians. And you're like, no, you're just straight and a pervert to boot.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is creating a. It's like, have you seen that guy who's now got the fake boobs in the
Oh
Oxford
God, that's repulsive.
University lecturer?
Yeah.
That's sexual harassment.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And
And
the fact that, that they're letting it
they're
happen, the
letting it
community is
happen.
allowing
It
it to
is
happen.
baffling
Yeah.
why this is happening.
I actually put something up to, I think it was yesterday, about so how would it be? Because if the university is going to allow him to
Yeah.
have his fetish, which is what it is, and live out his whatever he's doing and whatever
Mm.
he's getting off on, how about all the students come in with huge strap-ons? Would that be
Yeah.
all right?
Yeah.
Or if they
Well,
all did blackface,
this
you
is
know?
this is what I thought. I've often said, why did it end up in the Equality Act? Why didn't they put BDSM in? Why couldn't you be your authentic self? With nipple clamps and a mask on in work. Why wasn't that allowed? But this one was.
Yeah, yeah.
and I think a lot of it was because of the European Court of Human Rights and the case. Was it Goodman? I think it was Goodman. That was funny because it's man, but he went to the European Court of Human Rights and so he could get married or be or no. That's right. He did it so he could change his birth certificate so he could get married, and then that's where the gender recognition certificate and the act came in. One interesting fact, when they were arguing on the Gender Recognition Act, when it was going through Parliament, there were very few people who spoke against it. And I have to admit, at the time, I had a very young daughter and I hadn't even noticed it. It went straight past me. I had a very young child at the time. I was busy doing other things. But one of the people who was vocally speaking out against it and saying this is wrong and we're eroding women's rights was Norman Tebbit, of all people. And if you go and read his speeches in Hansard, they're amazing. And it's everything that we're saying now, he was saying then. And
What an
saying,
amazing guy.
but
Amazing.
nobody listened to him.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
listened to him.
yeah.
Um, and that's the thing. It snuck through in a way where we were just, I think, almost asleep at the wheel. We thought we'd won on women's rights. We thought, we're getting towards equal pay. There are still problems. You got they call it what's the gender gap and everything, but the reality is we do have the babies. We do have to take career breaks.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be a way of managing that, and that means that could be the next fight. But we still have things like equal pay if you're doing the job. So we've got that, and I think we lost the focus of we need to keep fighting because we didn't think we needed to keep fighting, and
Yeah,
now suddenly we do.
yeah.
And my God, we need to keep fighting because
We
what's
really
happened?
do.
For example, in hospitals, um, for disabled women, it is horrendous. I don't know if you've heard of Annex B, which was it was part of the policies in hospitals. And this was before devolution. It carried on in the English hospitals, and I think they adopted it for Welsh policy, the Welsh NHS. Was Annex B was that people will be put on wards of the sex they say they are, not the sex that they are, or
No,
the
yeah.
gender they say they are.
Mm.
Well, what about disabled women? Well, any sick woman, you're in a vulnerable state. These days, if you get a hospital bed, you're very sick. It's hard. They're like, there's hen's teeth trying to find a hospital bed. But if you're in hospital, you are very sick, you're in a vulnerable state. Quite often, you are on very strong drugs. And to have a man in the bed next to you when you're already feeling desperately unwell
Mm.
and in a vulnerable state is terrifying. Thankfully, I haven't actually experienced it myself for anything other than a very short time when I was admitted to it was the ward behind A&E when they're waiting to take you to your actual ward.
Sure.
And that's all mixed. And I had on either side of me a man.
Mm.
And they were both sick too. But it was still a feeling of, you're there in your nightie or
Mm.
pajamas or just a hospital gown if you've been admitted and you haven't got anything else with you. And it's a terrible feeling. And for a lot of men, I can imagine it's not nice for them either,
No, no.
because they're in a similar state if they're in hospital. But there have been WRN did a whole FOI project on how many sexual assaults and rapes that had been done in a hospital between 2019 and I think it was 2022.
Mm-hmm.
It was a short period, really. It was over 6,000 sexual assaults and rapes, most of them on women. There was a couple which were on children, sadly, boys as well as girls. And nobody really got angry about it. And we presented this data, and it's really solid data, and it was analysed by Professor Joe Phoenix. So it's going to be really solid data.
Mm.
And nobody got angry about it except for us. And you're thinking, where are the politicians? Why are they gutless? We've got Rosie Duffield. We've got some great ones on the right, but and then there's Tonya. I can't remember her name now. My brain goes. Antonia. whatever. Welsh woman. She used to be a rugby player. She's great. She's down south,
Okay.
and she's a southern down south, as in South Wales. And it's true. The whole of Labour Party who would actually speak up and say something. And then, and thank God for Kemi, she stood up and said no more Stonewall Law. But
Mm.
where were they? These women who have climbed the ladder, the most difficult ladder as well, because it is a very male dominated place still.
Yeah.
They just pulled the ladder up behind them and said, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I do want to sort of look into, and I'm going to
Mm,
sort of try and do a talk around this and do a chat
mm,
about it because you know when you're feeling vulnerable and you're feeling sick and you know you could be I don't know pissing and shitting yourself whatever
yeah,
you're bleeding or you're you know whatever it is there is something about being with other women that makes you sort of it raises you up just that little bit because you're feeling safe enough to be
exactly.
in that moment.
You feel safe enough to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. But when you have men, you know, even I've been in hospital myself, and even when it's a male nurse coming in or whatever,
Yeah,
I feel myself stiffen.
yeah,
I feel myself, Where's he going? You know, and I start pushing a
yeah,
nightie or something between my legs, or I'm pulling the blanket up,
yeah,
and he's just doing his job. But
exactly.
it's a woman's instinct thing.
It
And
is.
I have no doubt that it's the same for men. They don't want to be sick and
No.
ill and bleh in front of women.
There was a case up in Scotland where a woman who was on a psychiatric hold on a psychiatric unit, she went to the police and said she'd been raped. And they phoned the hospital and they said she can't have been raped because there's no woman on this ward. So she can't have been raped. And they carried on for 2 years denying there was a woman on the ward. Of course there was. It was a man who said he was a woman. But because they insisted that he was a woman, and by law, rape is penetration by a penis. So only men can rape. There's obviously other serious sexual assaults as well, but only men can rape. They denied it for 2 years, and it wasn't until Baroness Nichols got involved that they actually started to admit it. And finally, they admitted, but I don't know if it ever came to court because it could be by which time the woman was, I can't bear. Because that's the thing, because then you've got the whole, relive the whole thing in
Yeah.
court, because the way courts treat women.
Oh, yeah.
Um, for 12 years, I was a magistrate, and sadly, I had to resign from that because I think they get a bit miffed if you just say, I'm just going to have a little nap on the bench, you carry on. But I'm just having a little nap now. But we had the bench book, which is where everything, what you do, how you meant to do procedure, how you meant to speak to people, and all the rest of it. And the bench book for transgender criminals, defendants, had been written by a transgender judge, the first transgender High Court judge, a man pretending to be a woman, Victoria McLeod. McLeod? Yeah, McLeod. And it was awful, as you can imagine.
Mhm.
It was all she and her, and you'd have to say her penis, and it is just ridiculous.
Oh,
And thankfully, I was never what's called a presiding judge. I didn't sit, and you have three judges in the magistrates' court. The one in the middle speaks. We all have the same level of decision making, but there's only one person who speaks, which is how it should be, because otherwise it'll get too confusing. I never trained as a presiding judge because there's no. I would just refuse to do it. I'm not calling that person she.
mhm.
And forcing women who have been abused sexually by a man, sexually or physically by a man, to then call that person a she,
Yeah,
that just, it's more abuse. And that's what it is. It's about control.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
luckily, that's all now been stripped out of the bench book. So that's no longer there. So we're getting chipping away at it little bit at a time.
Mm.
But it's like Japanese knotweed. It is so entrenched in all the policies, in all schools, government, higher education, NHS, courts. It is so entrenched in them that trying to rip it out is just, it's going to take years. And if this government do try in the next, after, if it's in the Queen's speech that they're changing the Equality Act, God help us, we've got another fight on our.
We will. We will.
We're just going to have to put it on our big girl pants like they do. And
I think we really will. Um, so I'll tell you what happened to me today. which
Yeah.
shocked me really. So I advertise on a certain Facebook site that I would like people to join me for this chat show.
Mm.
And I talk about what it's all about and what we're going to be talking about. And 3 days ago, I thought, oh, I haven't heard from anybody. I wonder if I've had anyone leave any messages and it just hasn't shown up. So I went to look and I couldn't find my post. And then I noticed at the top, your post was declined. I thought, why was it declined? That's a bit odd. It was declined because I was talking about women's rights. I thought, hang on a minute. It's not illegal to talk
No.
about women's rights. It's not unlawful to talk
Nope.
about women's rights. It's not bad language to talk about women's rights. It's not insulting anyone to talk about women's rights, except the men who wear a dress. So I thought, I'm going to put it on again, see what happens. It was declined again for the same reason, because I was daring to talk about women's rights versus trans rights.
There's nothing wrong in discussing opposing rights.
There,
I
there
mean,
really isn't. And yet,
lawyers make millions out of it.
absolutely. So why is it that in the actual world, you're not allowed, you're sort of, they limit,
Yeah,
they are really limiting us
they're
where
censoring
we
us.
can talk about, why we
Mm.
can talk about it, and they're making women feel you're really not important enough to
Mm.
have an opinion.
And you're wrong.
Go away.
Yes, go away, go back into the kitchen, then don't worry your pretty little head about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. But apparently if you want what do they call it? Girl cock.
Mm.
Hey, lie on
Lady
your
Dick.
back.
Mm.
Yeah. That's apparently okay. That's acceptable.
It's
But, I
it,
mean, some of the stuff, some of the language I hear
oh, it's shocking.
from these men is
We,
it's
as I
appalling.
say, you can have the surgery, you can take the hormones, but there is nothing that's going to trans away the male misogyny.
Yeah,
It just isn't. It will never come out of some of those men. They hate women. They hate women.
they
It's not
really
that
do.
um I don't know if they hate us because they want to be us and they can't be us, or they just always been misogynists. But they are, or they're just threatened by women. Who knows what the hell's going on in their minds? I
Mm.
mean, not all trans people are like this. There are some people who just want to go out there and get on with it. I still have a problem with them because I still don't want them in my place.
Yeah.
I I can sympathise in a way, but at the same time, I've got my sympathy is reserved for the 13-year-old girl who is being upskirted with a camera under the changing rooms in Primark, who was terrified because there's a hulking great big bloke in there trying on a skirt. That's who my sympathy is with. And you get to a certain age, you only have X amount of sympathy left in you.
Well, this is it. I mean, I do wonder where that, I mean, I know we talked earlier about, well, I think they just went, they took on the tea and that just gave them, full reign. But
Yeah.
when I was growing up, even into my 30s, I would
Mm.
say, I've there was quite a number of men who were known around the village and the town that I lived near that they like to wear dresses, and no one batted an eyelid. There's festivals that I go to, and we'd see the same transvestite every year, and no one batted an eyelid. He was a nice guy. He respected women. He never went into the women's toilets
Yeah.
because I would watch him sometimes because I was curious.
Mm.
And he would always go to the disabled toilets. I never saw him in the women's toilets. And as far as I know, everyone I spoke to, no one ever saw him in
Yeah.
them. And he was respectful. So where did that shift come from? Where did that
I don't know.
misogynistic takeover, where did that
It
fury and that nastiness come from? That we see on when women won't wished and
yeah.
you can see this crowd of muzzled
Oh, they're
teenagers,
vile.
children
Yeah.
shouting, taunting, and they are abusive, they
Yeah.
are aggressive.
Mm.
The amount of aggression that comes from that is absolutely appalling.
It And I think they're
Really?
quite dangerous, some of them as well.
Absolute. I have no doubt. Some of the stories I've heard of women being followed, being cornered into shops,
Yeah,
the shops calling them transphobe and kicking
yeah,
them out to the crowd of
yeah.
people, and the police just standing by and saying, "No, I don't care." But
But
arresting
yeah,
the women say something, which we all know who the police work for, but we'll talk about that another time. But it's like I would just love to know where it came from. Where was that shift? Where was that point that turning point?
I think, I mean, I'm quite old fashioned in some ways, and I think we lost shame. And I think shame should be around a bit more. I'm not saying we should judge. Obviously, I'm very judgmental. I was a professional judge for a while. So I am very judgmental, but I am judgmental. And things like we seem to have lost a lot of standards along the way and behavioral standards. And the same, if you look at schools, things are going horribly wrong in schools, and
Mm,
teachers are leaving in droves because it's too bloody scary to be a teacher anymore.
yeah,
Because there's no discipline, there's no respect, and this whole thing is we have to listen to children, and we have why they know nothing. We don't listen. No,
What? I
I
know
don't think
what happened to that? What happened to the word no?
no. If my daughter had come to me and said to me, I think I'm a boy, I would have said, do you, dear? And that would have been that. I wouldn't have taken it. And I would have just said, well, you're not. So let's get on with it.
Hmm.
Because, but I don't know. I don't know where, obviously, you had these. I do feel sorry with some parents who were guilted into it by saying your child will commit suicide, which is
Hmm.
just the worst, wicked thing that those doctors could have done. It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I think a lot of them should be struck off. They should never be allowed to practice medicine again because what they did was evil.
Hmm.
I mean, I have oh god, I'm a total mess as well as MS. And currently, as I told you earlier, I've got an ear infection, so if I'm shouting, I'm sorry. I can't really hear the volume I am at. But I also have endometriosis, and one of the drugs they give you for endometriosis is the same drugs as they're giving to the children for puberty blockers.
Right.
And I had this as a grown-ass adult. It's a horrible drug. I was on it for 2 years, and it destroyed my joints completely. I now have early onset arthritis. Um, it puts you into a chemical menopause.
Yeah.
So for and it's like bang, suddenly 1 minute it's just not you normal, next minute bang, you're in the menopause. You get the whole flushes and the cognitive issues and everything. But it has left me with long term problems. You get osteoporosis. You have the cognitive issues can stay for a long time, even though you stop taking it. You still cause damage up there. I don't know whether it's menopause, the MS, or the fact that I was on this Zoladex drug. And I was a grown woman. This drug was designed for men for prostate cancer. That's what it was designed for. It was never tested on women. It certainly has never been tested on children, except that they did it, if you call it a live test, they just kept giving it to them.
Yeah.
And it's destroyed their bodies, and it destroys your fertility because they say, oh well, it's not your puberty will come back. It absolutely won't.
Mm. Mm.
And for a lot of these girls especially, it's more girls and boys, it will destroy their fertility and you will never ever get it back. And a 10-year-old cannot decide whether they want to have babies or not. They don't know. Most 10-year-olds don't know what they want for dinner. It is so cruel what we've done. And I think by we've taken away childhood from a lot of children, not just with the trans thing, with everything. Giving the children the vote, what on earth were they thinking?
Yeah.
If you're saying I can't trust a 16-year-old to go on a sunbed, you absolutely can't trust them with the future of the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's putting too much on these kids. And I think that's part of the problem. I think we lost shame, and I think we should bring back some shame. And I think we should shame people. Like you were saying, they should not be allowed to go in the streets wearing fetish gear and doing sex acts in
Yeah.
the street. It's disgusting, it's wrong, and it shouldn't happen. So I think we need to bring it back a bit of shame, and I think we need to allow children to be children and not expect them to have adults. And also, you can respect a child without respecting their opinions.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, as a child growing up in the 70s, I felt respected to a
yeah,
certain point, but
yes,
I knew
yeah,
that my mum would give me a look and it would
yeah,
be,
exactly.
you're stepping, you're overstepping it, you
Yeah,
push it, there's gonna, there's
yeah,
gonna be issues. But as a child, I needed to know those boundaries.
yes,
And it's how I found myself, who I was. Now, as
exactly.
a child growing up, I was one of the lads. I suppose you'd call me a tomboy, which I hate that
But
because
they would have got you
yeah,
if you were
but
today.
I was a tomboy. I was always fighting. I was always climbing trees. I was always getting filthy. I hated wearing dresses. I was I was just considered one of the lads. I think I had more boy friends
Yeah,
than girls really because I thought girls were a bit sissy and a bit, oh God, I don't want to play with dolls and stuff
yeah,
like that. But I didn't consider myself a tomboy. I found that well, I'm nothing to do with a boy.
yeah. I'm not a boy.
I'm a
I just,
girl
yeah,
who
and I
likes
just,
to do girl
yeah,
stuff. Just because you want to put boys into a different category, that's up to you.
yeah,
And I look back on that time and think there must be billions of girls who are like that now.
exactly.
And their parents are probably thinking, "Ooh, oh, can we join the show? Can we
Yeah,
be part of the club?" Because
yeah.
that's another thing that I'm watching is it seems like celebrities are all, oh, my child's trans, my child's non-binary,
Mm.
which is that's a severe
Don't get me
mental,
started on the end,
oh,
but
that's
the
a severe
envies.
mental illness. I mean, I'm a therapist. Someone who calls themselves non-binary is someone who hates themselves so
So much.
that they would prefer to be nothing than a person.
Yeah.
I mean,
Have
that
you
takes
seen
severe
in
help.
America they're doing non-binary surgery that just basically turns you into a Ken and Barbie doll and smooths everything out. So there's nothing. You're neither one or the other.
Oh my goodness.
And
Oh,
it's just like, oh
wow.
my God, why? How did we get to this point? This is absolutely bizarre. But yeah, the MBs are just, and I refuse to do the they them because that
Oh
is just
gosh, no.
it's a crime against the English language. I
I'm an author. I will
yeah,
never use they them. And I will never use pronouns either
no,
because I'm a 55-year-old woman. I have never in my life been asked what's your pronouns.
no,
Oh,
no.
shut up.
And I think the minute you surrender the language, you've lost the war. Because, for example, if you're trying to be nice, as we're, be kind, if we're being kind, and you've got a friend who's trans, and you say, "Well, I'll call him her, I'll call him her," and then you say, "But she can't go in the women's toilets," and people are saying to you, "Well, what do you mean she can't go? Because you said she's a she, so why can't she go into the women's toilets?" And then you have to get into the whole thing. Oh well, she's not like a woman, and the whole thing becomes ridiculous. You have lost totally there at that point. So I don't consider myself an ultra, as they call some women who won't use the pronouns. I just call myself accurate.
Fair enough. I just call myself goddess and
And
queen.
also, I mean,
Yeah.
as I say to my daughter when she was growing up, this is not a democracy. This household is not a democracy. It's a benign dictatorship, and
Hmm.
you will do what I say, and I will make sure you have a very happy, safe life
Yeah. Yeah.
as a child. Then, once you've grown up, they say, oh, and then it's up to you. But of course, it's not until they're about 50.
So moving forward, how do you think that um, women will evolve with this? Because what I've seen happen in my lifetime is that in my 30s and 40s, I'd see a woman's group advertised and I would go to it without thinking
Yeah,
because that's all I would expect, a woman's group.
yeah,
Over the last 10 years, I would say I've started going, is it a woman's group?
yeah.
And I mean, fairly recently, I was asked if I wanted to go to a women's festival, and I got in touch with the owner. Said, "Is it a women's festival?" Yes. for biological women. So it's for real women.
Yeah.
And the answer
Ah.
was all are welcome.
So no then.
So that's a no then.
Yeah.
So I'm not going
Yeah.
because if I go to a women's festival with my daughter, I expect to see women. That's it, nothing else. So I'm not going to take the chance. I'm not just not going to do it. I joined a women's group last year, and it's a beautiful group. Absolutely loved it. And it was for young mothers with new babies, and it was singing, and it was about closeness, and
Mm.
it was about protecting them and teaching them,
Yeah.
older women who have had children, helping younger
That's
mums
a
with new
lovely idea.
babies. It
Yeah.
was a gorgeous,
You
absolutely
know,
gorgeous group. And we would
especially if
get
they don't
together.
have any support, it's
Absolutely,
wonderful.
and we had knowledge,
Yeah.
that perhaps could help them and stuff like that. But it was about giving them a safe space to
Mm.
breastfeed and do whatever. And I sang with them, and it was a beautiful thing. And I was there for about 4 months. And then we were asked to go, whether or not we wanted to go to Story House in Chester. And
Yes.
we know they have no idea what a woman is.
You.
And I said, oh, no, no, I will, I've boycotted that place. I will never go to that anywhere that doesn't respect women. And she said, well, what do you mean? So I explained about my thoughts on the
Yeah.
matter. And I said, well, why are you going with with the group? You do know what they think about women.
Mm.
And she said, well, we allow all women. Oh, what do you mean you allow all women? You
There's
mean,
only one type of woman.
well, I was hoping, and I said, look, what do you mean? What, different race, different color? What different belief system? What? Well, no, they allow all women. So you're telling
Men.
me that you would have vulnerable young mums
Yeah.
breastfeeding babies, and if a man in a dress decided to turn up and say, I want to come and sing with you, you would allow him. Yes. So yeah,
It's like
I
we
can't sing with you. I can't respect you if you can't respect me. Because basically, you've said to every single woman, you are not important.
no, and your
He
safeguarding
is.
is not important. It's like all the
Absolutely.
things we learn, and God knows we learnt it hard over the past 50 years of the child abuse that was going on, and
Mm.
they always go to Jimmy Savile, but in Wrexham we had the Bryn Eston. We had these awful things happening to children, and we had to learn really hard lessons. And for a very short space of time, it seemed that we had got that, and that we were doing proper safeguarding, and we were doing checks and all the rest of it, and we just threw it out the bloody window.
Yeah.
And I've had this argument a lot with people, and they say, "Oh well, you're saying every trans is a rapist," and I say, "No, of course I'm not saying that. Don't be ridiculous." I say, "Is every teacher a kiddie fiddler?" "Oh no, no, no." So why do they all have to have checks then? Because it's risk management. It's part of the role that I used to do professionally as an auditor. Risk management was a big part of it.
Mm.
And as I try and explain it to people, I say, can you look at a man and say, or a man in dress, man in trousers, whatever, can you look at a man and say, yes, that is definitely a male sexual predator? And they're like, well, no, of course you can't. I said, well, until they wear lanyards to say, hi, I'm a male sexual predator, all men, regardless how they dress, regardless how they think of themselves, absolutely have to be kept out of the women's toilets or the women's changing rooms or wards or wherever, and especially prisons. For the love of God, that's just the
Oh,
most disgraceful thing that they've ever done.
some of the stories from that, they're
I mean, it's part
heartbreaking.
of the Geneva Convention that you don't lock up women with men. It's
Mm.
just terrible. But until we, they have to keep men out of women's spaces. And they keep saying, but, oh, well, most women get attacked at home. I said, oh, well, yeah, that's a bad thing. We need to deal with that. But just because the majority of women get attacked at home, not out of the house, why do you want to make out of the house more dangerous?
Mm. Mm.
It defeats me. It really does. It just defeats me. And the people who should be looking after women, the people who should have the most knowledge of safeguarding, have failed miserably.
Yeah.
My husband banging around. He's allowed to.
That's
I mean,
fine.
a good example is a couple of, well, probably a year ago, 2 years ago, the MS Society had put up on their Facebook the progress flag. You
Mm.
know, the progress flag, which is the pretend, you know, it's taken over from the pride flag. Pride flag doesn't exist anymore. It's always a progress, that awful chevron in.
Oh yeah.
So I put in it, and they were saying, "Oh, isn't it wonderful?" And we're, you know, it was the holy month of Pride, and they were going how wonderful they were about it, and they changed their icon to say MS with that behind. So I asked them a question. I said, "Would you, as the MS Society, support a woman with MS who had gone into hospital due to a relapse? Would you support her if she had asked for female-only intimate care? A man turned up in a nurse's uniform saying he was a woman and she had refused to care. Would you help her? If she'd gone to you and said, Can you help me? I need female only intimate care. And they came back with a whole load of gobbledygook about inclusion and all the rest of
Mm.
it. And it was basically no. They said MS doesn't discriminate, so we won't either. Well, in actual fact, MS does discriminate because 75% of people with MS are women.
Mm-hmm.
It very much discriminates. It is mostly a woman's disease. And the society who is meant to have our most interests at heart only cared about the men.
Yeah.
And it was a shocking moment for me that, like you had with Facebook, to read that. I was able to talk about it at a Let Women Speak event. Honestly, I was terrible. I was quite nervous before I got on the mic, and then I got on the mic and I was ready to do a set at Vegas. I'm like, come on, I can do this now.
I love it. I love it.
Like pushing Posey Parker out of the way, saying me.
So
But
what
yeah,
what can we do? I mean, can we, do you think, can we end on something positive?
oh god,
Do
that's a
you
hard
think?
one. I'm not
Do
feeling
you
very
think?
positive at the moment. I have to say, I think because we know next week we are going to have a Plaid Cymru. Um, I'm going to explain for people outside of Wales. Plaid Cymru is a Welsh nationalist, very left-wing Welsh nationalist party. They are very anti-women, and for my side as well, because I'm half Jewish, they're very anti-Semitic. So they're going to be the party in charge
Hmm.
because of this new way of voting. There's never going to be a majority. It's always going to be a coalition. And I personally think coalitions are a waste of time because they never get anything done. But it's going to be a coalition between Plaid and Labour, and their policies. If you read page 62, I even know the page number, page 62 of the Plaid Cymru manifesto says that they're going for self ID,
Yeah.
which is 100% against the Supreme Court ruling and the Equality Act. So I think in Wales we're in trouble. I think we're in real trouble in Wales.
Yeah.
I reform. Everyone said, "Oh, reform are going to do well," and they are. They're going to do very well. However, they're still not going to be in government because of the way the system works. It's going to be Labour, Plaid Cymru, or Plaid Cymru Labour, because they're going to be Plaid Cymru are going to be the first minister now. So I'm struggling to have a lot of. It's going to
I
be difficult,
know. I know. I
but
know.
I
I'm there
think
with you.
oh gosh, hold on, I've got a visitor. Oh,
Oh,
this
he's a cutie.
is Kevin.
Oh, hello, Kevin.
But yeah, I think the positive is, for me personally, joining. I was never much of a yay right on person. We went to Pride, and we did that, but I was never much of a campaigner or activist or anything. It took until my sort of 50s before I really got into it because they got me out. They really pissed me off. I mean, it takes a lot, but they got me there.
Yeah.
Um, and because of that, I met some wonderful women, some absolutely fantastic women, ordinary women doing ordinary lives who are extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I think knowing them, including yourself, I think because we have this much strength that we can take anything they throw at us.
Yeah.
And whatever's coming next, we're still going to fight it, and we are still going to win, because what we're talking about is we talk reality. We are living in a real world, not a fantasy world. The earth isn't flat. Unicorns aren't real, and men can't become women. And that is, I think, the main thing. I think it'll be interesting. We'll look back on this time, and there'll be academics writing papers and boring their pants off students in the future, looking back at this time, thinking, "What the hell were you all thinking?"
I really, really hope so. I really hope so. And I think I agree with you there. I think I am seeing a rise in women.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a rise in women who are they're not putting up with shit anymore.
No.
They are not putting up with men's abuse anymore. You know, men are whining because they're lonely. There's women who are they're seeing the truth of it, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think we do have to put this into some kind of perspective, you know,
Mm.
the amount of men pretending to be women and women pretending to be men is very
Yeah.
small. What we do have is we have the large group that's surrounding them, that's
Yes.
boycotted, that's
Yeah.
pushing them, that's giving them that,
Yeah.
come on, you know, you can take over the world. And I think at some point there is going to be a movement
Yeah.
forward of women of like you and I, you know, we're with the Women's Rights Network and
Mhm.
women's groups. And I think there's going to be a push of, right, we're not standing for this anymore.
No.
You are not belittling us anymore. You
No.
are not demeaning us. We are not standing here while you take our power away.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
take.
that's coming.
Yeah.
And I think when it really blows, I think that the pretend
Mm.
people and the misogynistic men are going to go, oh crap. I think we
Well,
pushed it too
yes,
far.
and I think,
We took it
yeah,
too far. You
yeah,
know,
this
there's
is
no
it,
going
and I
back
think
from that. There's no going back.
the pendulum will swing back. It always
Yeah.
does. It always does. You know, I'm not a religious person, but somewhere in the Bible it says this too shall pass, and things do. I was saying that to my daughter today. She was moaning about something. I said, "Don't worry about it.
Mm,
At some point things will get better. It's just getting through there is the hard part. But
mm.
having support from other women is the most brilliant thing. Sadly, I do think we need men to speak up as well, because God knows they never listen to us. As I always say, one way we know that trans women aren't women is because they were actually women. Nobody would have listened to a word they said.
That's kind of true. But then at the same time, you know, I do think we need to remind ourselves of that there are men, there's billions and billions and trillions of good
Yeah,
men out there who are standing up and saying, hang on a minute, no, you're not going into the bathroom. My
yeah,
daughter's in there. You're not going
yeah,
in there. That's my wife in there. My husband, 33 years, I don't know what he'd do if someone tried to go into the bathroom with
yeah.
our daughter. He'd go mental, you know.
My,
And it's you know there are a lot of good women, good men out there.
yeah,
There is a group called Hassel, um, and they've been sort of building this up for years, and they've now got. I think they've reached 1,000 men who are now ambassadors around the world, and they are encouraging all other men to start fighting for women, to start
yeah,
stepping up, to sort of stepping in and saying, no, you're not doing that. You're
yeah.
not diminishing woman just to make you feel okay. And that's what I will probably have on my tombstone.
Yes.
You know, I will not diminish who I am just to make a man in a dress feel okay.
No,
That's
absolutely.
that's just not what it's just not
That's a
happening.
good thing to have on your tombstone.
Yeah.
Not like Spike Milligan, who had on his tombstone, "See, I told you I was sick."
Oh no, I might have that actually. That's a good one.
It's a good one. Well, it would be Spike Milligan, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You know,
Yeah.
we do need the men to stand up as well, because it's their daughters and it's their uh, and they do. And my husband, he doesn't stand up because, well, he can stand up at home, but when he's out and about, he's in a wheelchair. So he's become quite famous because he has to take me, because he now has to take me places because I can't drive anymore because of the MS. So he's now become more, and he loves it. He absolutely loves getting involved with it all. He's always up for a fight, and he keeps trying to get arrested, and nobody will arrest him, and he's very sad about that. But and we do have some really good men who will do it. And I don't know. I think the only way that our prime minister, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be prime minister next week or not. Who knows? We'll see. But I think the only way he will actually understand it if somebody makes a bloody drama about it, because that's the only way he seems to get moved by anything.
Apparently.
Apparently,
Apparently.
Nick
And
Nick Wall is it Nick Wallace? He did the drama about the post office scandal.
yes, yeah,
He is doing one about Fulham in Scotland,
brilliant.
and that will be amazing.
Oh, I will watch that.
Yeah,
I will definitely
and
watch.
he's very much on our side. He's a really,
Yeah.
as we say in Yiddish, he's a mensch, which means he's a good man. He's a good
Yes.
guy. Yeah. So,
Well,
but
I
yeah, I
think,
think we do have some positives there. We've already learned how to fight,
yeah,
or we've relearned how to fight, and now we know we are Turf Island, and we're not taking it anymore.
yeah, absolutely. And I think on that note, we will
Yes.
finish there. So, because yeah, w women have been,
Yeah.
we've survived men, we've survived every abuse the man has thrown at us. So I think we can deal with this one too.
I am woman. Hear me roar.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you can get together with other women, find that group, WRN, Women's Rights Network, find out about it. Women won't wished or anything, just go and
Oh, new one. North Wales Sisters. North Wales Re Sisters.
North Wales Re Sisters.
Yes. So
Okay.
they cover the whole of obviously North Wales.
Fabulous, fabulous. So I would like to thank you, Beth, for joining me for this
Been really
discussion
good.
today.
Thank you.
It's always lovely to meet women and from Wales as well, which is great. So this is two Welsh ladies, two Welsh
Sort of. We don't
warriors,
sound like it, but yeah,
Cymru, two Welsh women
I'm that much Welsh.
saying goodbye. And thank you so much for joining me on
Thank you
Everyday
for having
Talks
me.
with Women. And next month, we are discussing menopause and how society treats the women who are dealing with that. And I'll be joined by a lovely woman called Gloria, who is an expert on the subject. Okay, I'll see you next time. Thanks very much. Bye bye.